Oh. Okay. Well, all right. This is interesting. As they're getting started, so it appears that both these players are, in fact, already out of the tournament. At least in the group stages, they are now just fighting to not get that sweet 0-3. Now that's if you can leave this extremely difficult tournament with at least one win, then you're feeling pretty good about yourself. So. Yeah, they are off. It's pretty straightforward section. The escape sequence, the most exciting 6 minutes of your life whenever running this game or just playing it casually. And it's really hard to make any sort of major mistakes. If anything, it's just going to be movement and RNG that's going to come into play about who gets through here first. I just want to use this time to talk about how great this tournament has been. It's been a lot of fun to watch as and as a participant in the tournament. It's a nice break from the usual, the casualness of some of the other stuff I've played in. But yeah, take a look. Their other group members were a Metatron, who actually finished out at 2-1, losing only to, I believe, DK Ludi 24, who actually went 3-0 in their group. So, yeah, this group has already been decided. Basically, if you get 2 losses, you're pretty much out. And, man, that's just how it goes. Oh, man, that lead change. Here we go. Seconds apart. Yeah, I also personally don't know very much about either of these players as NMG runners. I know them quite well in other modes of this game, but it's exciting to watch and see what other players can bring to the table. You know, especially it's fun watching in this tournament, watching all the different skill levels compete, and like, especially when you see them competing against each other, it's like you can see just how optimized each of these rooms are, and when you got like a runner that's sub 130 versus a runner that's like mid 135, like even that big of a difference in timer or in like personal best can be evident in how they execute each room. Yeah, coming up is the ball and chain guard. There are 2 options here, basically 2 pots, a pot and 4 slashes or 8 slashes. And looks like with that, Chex is going to take the lead back, optimizing that use of a pot to do 4 damage out of the 8 damage required to kill the ball and chain guy. Now Vascos sitting at a heart and a half. He's got to be careful. He might actually opt to grab a heart from one of the pots on the way out. If not, there are a few safeties, a few pot hearts on the way through the rest of escape. Now, I, for one, have been, unfortunately, in a position of leaving this portion of escape at half a heart. And, you know, all it takes is one little poke from one of these guards, and you're sent straight back to Zelda Cell to make that long trek back. See, just like that. Okay, Vascos got the better. See, on Chexhuman's side, the blue guard got aggroed like a lot quicker, and actually took a heart or half heart of damage. Which, if that had happened to Vascos, obviously he'd be donezo. Yeah, there's the 2 hearts there. As soon as you get past like the little mantle thing, there's 1 hot heart on the way to the door to the next room. We'll probably see Chex pick that up. Being down to a heart in here it's not that bad. You could take quite a few hits from rats. I think they only do quarter damage, so you'd have to like get hit by rats 4 times in order to take a full heart of damage. The snakes, though, they do half hearts, so you got to be careful there. I also think the keys do quarter damage as well. Oh, Vasco's getting the worst snake RNG, having to optimize or having to use the boomerang twice just to clear a path. Ooh, oh no. So, first of all, both players kind of getting bad RNG with the rat moving up to the top part here. Chexhuman tried to grab it with the boomerang, but grabbed a blue rupee that was dropped by another rat that he killed at the same time. Vascos also not getting very good RNG in that room either. That rat hug in the wall kind of getting in the way. But Chex is going to win this first split in the 1v1 competition of getting to escape first. Gonna probably grab that chest there, which contains a free heart container known as Sanctuary Heart, which not only gives, unlike other heart containers that we'll find in the game, it gives you an extra heart container and refills all of your health. It's a good one. It's a nice one to have. And there are some crazy players that even skip it. It can also be kind of annoying trying to get to that chest, because sometimes you'll just get stuck on the priest there for no reason. So both players now on their way to essentially the first dungeon, East Palace or Eastern Palace. It's pretty straightforward. Not much really to do there. It can get a little dicey when you're down, when you only have 4 hearts. There's some enemies that do a whole heart of damage. But basically, the path of the game is we need to beat 3 dungeons in the light world. Grab the Master Sword, and then go beat up a dude, go to the Dark World, complete 7 more dungeons in the Dark World, which get progressively harder, and then go to another tower and beat up another dude. It's pretty basic video game, guys. But there's just something about the way that they did it that makes this game so great compared to the others. It's one of my favorites of all time. Otherwise, I wouldn't. It has to be, otherwise I wouldn't be here talking about it. But Vascos back down to that single heart, half heart challenge. He's got to be a little careful in here. He could easily take a death from one of these little cannonballs. Just get some bad enemy RNG. There are a few hearts, as we saw Chexhuman grab along the way. There's that heart there, and then another one in this little Stalfos room. This room's kind of nifty. You're going to see both players do some strange movements, which allows them to kill these skeletons that are apparently here, but you can't see them. Basically, depending on how you move in that room, will spawn up to 4 skeletons. Oh, nice little boomerang used to snatch that without having to walk over there. But if you walk in there at through a certain path and toss some pots in certain directions, you can actually kill 2 that haven't even spawned yet, and then for whatever reason, it doesn't allow the other 2 to spawn. Both players now back up to good, comfortable health. Actually, now they're both tied. Okay, now Chex is leading. Coming up, you're going to see a little, what we call a damage boost. Essentially, they're going to take intentional damage from an enemy, which gives them invincibility frames or invulnerability frames to allow him to pick up the pot here, which contains a switch that he's going to press to get the big key from here. Normally in that room, you have to kill all the enemies, but by using that, you can skip having to do that and saves quite a bit of time. Ooh, Vascos got to be careful. Back down to heart. Those little fireballs, the anti-fairies, do a full heart of damage, too. If you mess up that room, there are 2 hearts under pots in that room that you can grab to get yourself back up, but Vascos is going to have to be careful in here. These rooms can kind of get away from you if you're if you miss your shot. Oh no! Well, first death. That's a rough room. The little bag of worms or whatever gets in your way, and then all of a sudden you get popped by one of the Igors, and the Igors do a full heart of damage. So he's got to walk all the way back through the dungeon. It's not that big of a time loss compared to dying in other dungeons, but it's still extremely unfortunate. Just got to take out this last one. You saw throughout the run of this dungeon, players were picking up arrows and a bunch of different pots, because you need at least 18 arrows to take out this boss. And not only that, but we also ideally like to have arrows for the next dungeon as well. There's a particular boss that is kind of a pain if you just use sword slashes, so you'll see them utilizing arrows later on. But that's one of the parts about this game in general, is that you got to be very aware of your resources, your resource management. You know, keeping track of how many bombs you have, how many arrows, how many rupees too, as well as health and magic. Let's see if Vascos can. That's unfortunate. A little too early on the red Igor. Having to wait one extra turn. Getting another arrow drop, so he's going to be walking in this fight with all 30. Hopefully let's see if he walks away with a little more than 4. And gets the nice little quick kill. So basically, if you can kill all the enemies quick enough, you won't see that red Armos Knight happen, which is when that happens, they get all their health back, and then you have to use more arrows. It's kind of a pain in the butt. So, but Vascos will be feeling pretty good, leaving this dungeon at 12 arrows. What we saw over on Chexhuman side, which we'll see on Vascos side soon, is you get the green pennant to talk to Sahasrara over here, and he gives you the boots, which increases your movement speed tremendously. It also allows you to do some nice little glitches, including spin speed, which allows you to, it puts you in a glitch state. You can always tell if you're in spin speed because you can't use your sword, but it allows you to move extremely fast around the overworld. And we'll see its utilization quite a bit in this run, particularly up like Death Mountain or like right outside of Sahasrara's hut. We also see both players going for, there's 100 rupees and 3 bombs back here. We'll be needing the bombs later on in the run, and we'll also be needing rupees later on the run. Chexhuman still needs 4 more. The first dungeon in the Dark World actually requires 110 rupees to open, and it'd be unfortunate to get to that part of the game and not have 4 extra rupees. But there's a lot of enemies still in the game that drop rupees along the way, so good chance we'll find it. And Vascos, whew, really tight on the bridge, getting through without taking damage. But you're seeing both players grab this book from the library. We're going to need that twice in the game. Once to get into our next dungeon, Desert Palace, as well as later on to get a particular item up on Death Mountain. Oh, wow. I know someone had mentioned that you don't actually need to get that close up to the that little tablet there to read it. I didn't realize you could get that far away from it, so... Desert Palace is pretty straightforward. It's pretty much just a back and forth, grab keys to get stuff. We're getting an item here called the Power Gloves, which is a lift option. Gives you the ability to lift rocks, which is required not only to beat the game, but as well to get to the boss of this dungeon. You're also going to be seeing Chexhuman grabbing more arrows from pots along the way. There are quite a few in this dungeon. He's going to want to get at least up to 20 plus is preferred. 25 would be superb. And you're going to see why eventually. Vascos actually running right into a cactus. I shouldn't laugh, but it was really funny. You can actually dash, you can get pretty close to this the cactus without running into it. Surprisingly, so maybe. I'm assuming he was trying to dash underneath it, but... And there's the power glove. Chexhuman has everything he needs in this dungeon, and he's sitting at a pretty cozy 24 arrows. The reason why we need these arrows is because the next boss, Land Mollas, is basically 3 worms that take either 16 slashes with the sword each, I think, or 4 arrows each. And the reason why it's kind of an awful boss is because a good chunk of it is particularly, well, pretty much all of it is RNG. Random which pattern he takes, and being able to efficiently take him down in as few cycles as possible is hard to do. Best situation is getting them in 2 cycles. 3 is pretty good, is really good too, like extremely good. 4 and 5 is good, is subpar, you know, comfy. You can leave Desert Palace with 4 and 5 cycles feeling, all right, that's good enough. I can live with that. Yeah, Vascos will probably be heading into the boss with 27 arrows. And depending on how you route the rest of the next sections, you kind of want arrows as well. It's always good to have arrows and not having to like search for arrows or hoping for drops. But let's see this Land Mollas fight from Chexhuman. Not bad. 2 in the first one, 1 and 1 in the other 2. Getting some very nice movement from them, all of them going straight for him. That's 1 down. That's 2 down. Was that a 3 cycle? That was pretty clean. I'd be happy with that. That was pretty good. Vascos following not too far behind him. So next up for Chexhuman, we're going to see one of our first fun little glitches, the fake flipper. And we use it to optimally get from one part of the game to the other. Of course, saving and quitting is not allowed in this category, except for one particular situation which could come into play. Let's hope not. But the fastest route, we're trying to get it up to Death Mountain, so the fastest route would be to save and quit and start back at Sanctuary and just dash over. But of course, saving and quitting is not allowed. So we use a fake flipper here. That was interesting. that was a thing that happened. Yeah, fake flipper, essentially you hit the water and then screen transition. It essentially tricks the game into thinking that you do have the flippers when in fact you do not. And of course the game doesn't check to see if you have the flippers before. But we use it to take a whirlpool that gets us right to Death Mountain. Yeah, it looks like Vascos is having a little bit of trouble in this Land Mollas fight. Yeah, it's tough because it's like, if you shoot too early, then you have to wait for your arrow to land before you can shoot another arrow. And dealing with all these like little quick hops is extremely frustrating. And he goes down. I didn't catch how many cycles that was, but maybe it's best if we didn't. But yeah, that's a very frustrating boss in general. You talk to any NMG runner, they will always say that. I can't imagine any of them not saying that that boss just in general sucks. And you'll see here on Chexhuman's side another utilization of the spin speed, which allows us to kind of zip through Death Mountain. You still have to be graced by the RNG gods and not getting boulders to the face. But essentially, we're heading up to the next dungeon, Tower of Hera, which we're going to be getting the Moon Pearl from there, which will allow us to go into the Dark World without turning into a bunny, like we saw on Chexhuman's side. This dungeon is pretty straightforward, but this dungeon can also be, I don't know, it can be kind of challenging. It's a lot of enemies that do, like, full heart damage here. Oh man, and both of them getting that weird set. Why did that happen to both of them? They both did the little thing where they dashed into the water. Or, like, they jumped, but stayed in place and splashed on the land. And one of the more boring parts about this dungeon is the beautiful tile room, which we have to sit through in order to get the big key, which will allow us to go upstairs. There is another nice little trick up ahead, little glitch, little technique, which we're going to see a lot throughout the run. Well, entirely in dungeons. It's the bomb jump, which is a particular setup that allows you to, once again, damage boost across pits or holes using a bomb to blow yourself across the other side. Down 2.5 hearts is not very comfy for this dungeon. Might see Chexhuman opt to grab some hearts along the way. There's like 1 heart along the way, and then if you set it up, there's like 30 hearts right before the fight. And that bomb you just saw there from Chexhuman is where, if you skipped the Sahasrara's hut, if you skipped the bombs in there, that would have been generally would be your first bomb you get in the game. Yep, and looks like Chex is going to set up to get hearts right before the fight. Really nice petting zoo from Chex, getting through there without having those mini Moldorns bop him or get in the way. And there we go. You'll see players will like bonk into the wall, and then as you're bonking or taking that knockback from the bonk, you get blown across to the other side. There's actually quite a little bit more breathing room to do that, or to get the bomb jump successfully if you set up the bonk beforehand. So, but sometimes players will like go the extra distance to get as close to the hole as possible, but then still do the bonk, just to be sure. Now, Moldorm is kind of it's a pretty straightforward fight. His movement can kind of really be obnoxious, but you have to hit him six times, and after the 5th time, he goes into a enraged mode, where his speed increases dramatically. But a very nice fight from Chexhuman. No concern at all. That fight can easily get out of hand, especially during that last phase. We've seen several times where players will get to the last hit, where Moldorm goes super fast and then knocks someone off. And that hole you see right there in the middle is the last place you want to fall. Because if you fall down there, you're going to fall down 2 floors as opposed to 1. That was a really good Hera. Very nice from Chex. So he's on his way now to go get the Master Sword from the Lost Woods. And he'll be making his way to Aghanim's Tower, which is the dungeon that links us between the Light World and the Dark World. Oh, no, 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 no. Don't tell me. Oh, wow. That is a horrible place to die. So Vascos, he was dashing over to light the torches so he can get the big key, but unfortunately, sitting at half a heart, he was susceptible to any sort of damage. And unfortunately, when dashing at the Stalfos, it spooked him into a place that was right in the way for Vascos, and he immediately died and had to do all the tile room over again. So that is a tremendous time loss. And sometimes you'll see players, if they go into this dungeon at like 1 heart or half a heart, they might opt to just take a death warp to get their health back. But he gets through tile room a second time, utilizing a nice little trick where if you hit the switch whilst you're standing on top of the blocks, it'll give you iframes, which allow you to just kind of stand there and do nothing while you wait for the tiles to finish up. No, and Chexhuman picking up the mushroom. So mushroom is a nice little... It's one of the safeties that we have in the game. Later on, we're a few dungeons away from that, but what you can do is you can take that mushroom over to the Witch's Hut, which is on the east side of the world, in the light world, and they'll turn it into a nice fine powder. And you can use that powder to powder certain enemies, including bunny beams, the little beams that turn you into a bunny, or the antifairs like we saw in Eastern Palace. And it will give you fairies, which will allow you to heal a good chunk of your hearts. But unfortunately for Vascos, was not close enough to the... I talked earlier about, you know, people going the extra mile to make sure that they're as close as possible to the hole, but still setting up the bonk. And clearly, the room, the amount of room you have to get it successfully is a little bit wider than I thought. And unfortunately, falling down that hole is similar to falling down that middle hole in the Moldorn fight, is that you fall down all the way back to the beginning of the dungeon. You fall a couple floors. There we go, second try. But, once again, Vascos is sitting at 1 heart, so he's got... I'm sorry, Vascos. This dungeon sucks. He got kind of pincered there. He was stuck between a Kodongo's Fire Blast and a mini Moldorn making his way over to him. That's really unfortunate. So over on Chexhuman's side, we are heading up to Aghanim's Tower. This dungeon's pretty straightforward. Just a bunch of... It's just basically a gauntlet. A little mini gauntlet. Just get through the rooms. There are certain rooms where you have to kill all the enemies, such as these rooms with the red guards. And a lot of times you see players optimize... or decide to use their arrows to take them out. Arrows, sword spins... You see Chexhuman swapping to Boomerang and using that Boomerang to alert the guards to bring them towards him. And hopefully if he gets good RNG... no. Unfortunately, that red guard decided to aggro. Come on, Vascos, let's get this Moldorn fight going. Nice use of dash strats, just to dash right through him and go right through and hit his little dumb tail. He's got to be careful here. Moldorn is not having it. Oh my god. Oh, that's... You're so close. Just had to hit him once more. But, you saw Vasco sitting there, like, getting bopped against the arena, but not falling off at all. As long as you're holding away from the edge, you won't fall unless you actually take damage. Which is exactly what we saw from Vascos' side. Yeah, this Tower of Hera is like... is not being too kind. Alright, let's... Over on Chexhuman's side, he is at the Aghanim fight. This fight is extremely straightforward. There's nothing else to it. It's all basically 50-50s. Aghanim will either shoot a yellow energy beam, orb, or he'll shoot what we saw there called blue balls, which you can't reflect back into him. You'll see him disperse into an array of the blue energy balls. Basically, after the first attack, it's a 50-50 whether he gives you the energy orb or the blue balls. And, you know, ideally you want to get 0. But more than likely you're going to get like 3 through 6. And depending on how you get, determines how long the fight goes on, and every 4th attack by Aghanim will always be the 4 or 5. I think will either be this lightning attack we saw here, so it's one of those things where like it just compounds upon each other. It's like, oh, you get a blue ball, oh, you know what that means? You also get a lightning attack. So I didn't see. I think that was either 2 or 3, which is a generally pretty okay for an Aga fight. Vascos now making his way over to get the Master Sword, and he'll be following behind Chexhuman, though at this point, I'd say... Well, we'll find out. But a few minutes behind at this point. And it looks like Chex is going to be maybe like 15 or 10 seconds off of his PB. I saw his timer turn red during that little dialogue section, so... Alright, so coming up is going to be our first Dark World dungeon, Palace of Darkness. Chexhuman did grab a couple rupees along the way, so he's got the 110 rupees he needs to convince this lovely little blue-purple monkey, Kiki, to open up Palace of Darkness for him. 10 rupees to get him to follow you, and then 100 rupees once you get to the door. You gotta be careful here, because if you take damage, you lose Kiki, and then you gotta somehow scrounge up another 10 rupees. Nice little dash cancel to trick Kiki from having to walk all the way up there himself. So what is so exciting about this dungeon? Well, there's a really cool trick about halfway through, known as the hammer jump. It's another bomb jump like we've seen before, but this time it is a double pixel perfect bomb jump. And probably the hardest bomb jump of the entire run. And it's why we kind of need as many bombs. We need quite a few bombs for this, which is why it's a nice thing that this dungeon gives you a ton of bombs. You'll see Chex using the mirror to mirror back to the start every time. We'll also be utilizing that, which is nice because every time you mirror back, it resets all the pots that have bombs in them, or just resets all the pots in general. Vascos, I know what he's trying to do, but unfortunately, it's if you missed it initially, it's a little bit harder to do. Essentially, he's trying to kill these guards by dashing through them. And one of the nifty things about this game is that there is a prize pack for killing certain enemies. Certain enemies have different prize packs that'll drop hearts, magic, arrows, money, all that good stuff. One of the best prize packs are the full magic drops, the 8 bomb drops, and the fairies, such as that one that Chexhuman just got. Hold on, let's see. That looks pretty good. That looks pretty perfect. I stand correct. Was he... I couldn't tell. Was he too far up, maybe? That looked good to me. Maybe the initial setup was wrong. He might have been down 1 pixel on the startup. That looks good. Now he just has to move down 1. There we go. That should work. That looks good. There we go. Whew. Yeah, you'll see players, there's a few ways you can set that up using, you could either use like pause buffer, which we saw from Chex, select buffering, which is a little bit harder, and then some people are just crazy and they just go for sword buffers, which can like slash the sword at the same time you move in order to move like single pixels. Okay. Chat is letting me know that you needed to... He was too far away from his bomb. Or either A, placed it too far to the right, and then was also too far away from it. That explains why sometimes I've messed that up, and I'm like, why? I did it right. I disagree, video game. But anyway, back on the topic of prize packs, essentially, if you dash through enemies and kill them that way, they won't drop anything, ever. And there's a way you can kind of manipulate prize packs in the game to do your bidding, depending on how you kill certain enemies in the game. And for whatever reason, there's extremely good reason, I just don't know it. Those 2 guards that Vascos is clearly still working on, seeing as he's still in that room on my screen. If you dash through those and make sure that they don't drop any items, there's a good chance that you get a fairy drop later on in the run at a very important part of the run. Yeah, moving on will be the next boss, Helmassar King. He can be kind of a jerk, if you will. All of his attacks do 2 hearts of damage, so ideally, you know, you want to have as much health going into this boss, because some of his attacks are kind of hard to dodge, and moves pretty quick. So basically 17 hits with a hammer to knock off his mask, and then there's a few ways you can take him out in the second phase. The most common is just spins or slashes with the Master Sword. There's also, you can use 8 arrows to take him down. So it's a little bit harder to hit him right in that big green jewel if he's moving frantically. Looks like Chex is going for sword slashes, which extremely safe, gets through it. Only taking 1 hit, so nice work. You also saw a nice little utilization of the game's limitations. Essentially, if you hesitate to hit him the 17th time, that would break off his mask. If you wait until after if he's doing the fireball attack and you wait for the fireball to actually leave him, and you break the mask, it'll actually despawn all the fireballs. And those guys can be a kind of a pain in the butt. Vasco's back. He is heading into the Dark World now. I didn't catch his Agaphite, so I can only assume he got the godlike 0 blue balls. What a legend. But he'll be making his way over to Palace of Darkness. But at this point, Vascos is about some overworld and a full dungeon behind. So he's gonna need to step it up if he wants to catch up in this race. So until we get to our next dungeon on Chexhuman, we've got a little bit of overworld movement to do first. We got some fetch quest stuff we gotta do. We gotta go grab some things. And you know, good part of the game is, of course, execution and fighting bosses and all that stuff. But another really good part of the game is just overworld movement. And trying to get from point A to point B with taking as little damage as possible. Nice little hammer dash there. That's a good time to explain the hammer dash. So essentially, there's a few fancy tricks. A few fancy tricks you can do with items. Hammer dashing allows you to blast through those pegs that we saw on the bridge. It also allows you to like dash through pots essentially as well. There's a few other item dashes. I don't know if we'll actually see any of them in the game. Another, like, it's not really an item dash, but another one we will see later is the use of the hook shot, which we won't know until after we finish Swamp Palace, and I'll talk about it then. Oh, man. The 2-dig. The 2-dig flute kit. That's a good record right there. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I've seen the best record is the 5-dig. That's my favorite one. Yeah, shovel to get the flute. Flute will be used later for well, not only just like movement in the overworld, it's also required to complete one of our dungeons. Nice little spin speed there to get past that really obnoxious red guard. And since Chexhuman did pick up the mushroom, there's a good chance he's going to use that flute right now to head over to the witch's hut, turn in his mushroom, get his powder before heading into the next dungeon, which is going to be in Gargoyle's Domain. Thieves Town. Dungeon number 4. And it looks like that is the plan. There's a really cool little spin speed. You can actually get spin speed right off of the witch's hut like entrance, the little ladder right there, and it saves a tiny bit of time, but it looks really good. Chexhuman's going to be heading into the Dark World. You got to kind of route around because we don't have the item which we get in Thieves Town to be able to get into that portal over here a little bit quicker. The reason why we're going to Thieves Town, despite it being dungeon number 4, we're going in there to get the Titan Mitts, which is a lift upgrade, an upgrade from the Power Glove that we got in Desert, and that's going to allow us to get a sword upgrade, which is, you know, faster in the run to go ahead and get that just because of how much of an attack difference it has between from the Master Sword. And the nice thing is also the boss of Thieves Town is immune to weapon values in a sense. It's always going to be a set number of hits in order to take down the boss. So, but it also wouldn't make sense to get the mitts, leave Thieves Town, get the sword, and then go back and fight the boss. That's just bad routing. But since we're kind of jumping the script and going into Palace or Dungeon 4 as opposed to Dungeon 2, there's a bit of an increase in damage that these enemies can do now. So now a lot of these enemies can do 2 hearts of damage. So essentially, they're just a bunch of Helmassar Kings, pretty much. And you can easily see your health dwindle away in this dungeon. And it's kind of a dungeon that's a bit of a pain to take a death in, especially later. Oh, nice recognition. He was probably going to get hit by that fire bar, so we decided to skip out and just walk around it. Let's see if he gets this lineup. He did. Oh, that looked like he got the lineup. So there's a cool little thing you can do in this room. If you dash right out of the doorway and then cancel dash at a certain part, you can. Oh gosh, hold on. Oh man, good thing powder's the thing. Whew. That was a little dicey. But essentially, you could. There's a particular pixel setup or lineup where you can dash through that entire room, right up the conveyor, without a care in the world. The only problem is it's RNG dependent. It depends on where the enemies line up, and unfortunately, Chex did not get the good RNG for that room. And in fact, he got really bad RNG because he almost died. Bombing open that wall is important and kind of required to actually beat the dungeon. There is a character sitting down in the basement of this dungeon that you have to take into the room, the boss room, known as Blind. And when you take her in there, she's like, "Ah, the light. I hate it. I hate you too." And then she turns into a vile cat-cloaked monster. Some Zelda lore for you there. It's pretty good stuff. And there is the perfect example of why the hammer is garbage. It has such a weird hitbox. Well, I know the first thing that Chexhuman is going to need to practice in their next NMG run. I have Unfortunately, we do not have a bonk count in the credits for the vanilla game. But I have been seeing a lot of bonks from him, especially in this dungeon. And, of course, he is playing on emulator, which you could tell by the on-screen. They're actually both playing on emulator. But you can tell because of the on-screen input display and whatnot. And it's a little bit easier to bonk if you're playing on emulator because of the input delay. But that's just one of those like little room optimizations. If you can, if you can go through the entire game without any unintentional bonks, the time save, man. Just think about it. Wow, that was a really good blind fight. Even getting the kill in the center, so they don't have to walk as far. All right, next up is going to be a little bit more overworld shopping. There are 2 locations here in Village of Outcasts, which we need to acquire some rupees, which we'll be using later on to purchase a particular item that is required to beat the game. But first and foremost, we also got to grab this little frog down here, the instant utilization of the Titan Bits. Grab this frog, and I'm going to go trade him in for a tempered sword. The level 3 sword in this game, and the only other sword upgrade we're going to be getting in this run, for the most part. There is another sword upgrade that we can get later on, the gold sword, but not that many people. I mean, the thing is, you can still get it and get a good time in this game, but it is a little bit out of the way. The game is also kind of weird. You can, a lot of times when you mirror into, like a mirror from the dark world and the light world, and you like stand on top of a particular object, it'll essentially bonk you back to the dark world, saying, "Hey, I don't like that. You have to go back." But for some reason, you can mirror right on top of that doorway to that. You can mirror right on top. You can mirror right on top of that doorway, and it allows you just to go right in. The also nice thing about that is as soon as you leave that building, they'll immediately put you back in the portal and spawn you back into the dark world. But yeah, tempered sword in hand, we're going to be heading on to the next dungeon, the Skull Woods dungeon, which is an interesting concept. It has a bit of a unique layout as opposed to the other dungeons that we've seen so far, in the fact that, I mean, I guess it's kind of similar to Desert Palace, where there's multiple parts of the dungeon. So essentially, he's skipping the first section. Let's go to get the big key, which is in the second section, and introducing one of the worst enemies in the game, the Gibdo, or the Mummy. Getting some good movement from... That's pretty good. Does he have it over enough, though? He does. Nice. That was a really good Gibdo room. Sometimes you can get some really bad RNG from those guys, and they just run right into you, and you're trying to move as quickly as you can, because there's a wall master, a little big hand guy that drops down and will essentially act like a mirror. It'll warp you right back to the beginning of the dungeon. Oh, nice. Man, I wonder why he didn't do that in Hera. Probably because the penalty for failing is a lot worse. So that's another nice little setup you can use. Essentially, if you charge a spin and let go of it right as you hit the edge of the hole and hold away, it'll give you the ideal setup in order to get the bomb jump without having to bonk across. A lot of players will just like dash buffer to get up to the hole, or even the sword buffer to get up there, just to set it up so you don't have to bonk, but it's a nice little one there. Yeah, Fire Rod in hand. This is a required item that we need to not only unlock the last part of this dungeon, but it's also required to get through another room filled with those obnoxious Gibdos, the Mummy Hallway. Check's going the safer route, just taking out as many mummies as you can, because they can kind of get in your way. And nice moving into the last room, only down 1 heart, which is only down 2 hearts, which is not too bad. Fortunately, that hit from the mini Moldorm kind of ruined his setup. A lot of players will try and set up so that they slash that Gibdo into the spike, because of course that's a thing in this game. And speaking of dashing or hitting enemies into spikes, welcome to the Mothula fight, which can go 2 different ways. Essentially, it can be over in a blink of an eye. That was still a really good fight. One of the things you have to remember about this boss is he's broken. And essentially, if you slash him or hit him into the spikes, he just won't take damage from that spike, from that hit. It's like it never happened. Overall, pretty good from Chexhuman. He's still behind in his splits, but he's making up time. I think. I might just be making that up. Actually, let me look. He did make it a little bit of time. Still about 40-something seconds off of his PB. Yeah, it's not very often that players are running for a PB in a tournament setting. The cool thing about this tournament, or just in general, is about these kind of tournaments, is the ability to watch the restream. You can see where your opponent's at, which mistakes they've made, if you need to like play safer or more aggressive to make up time, and pretty neato. But yeah, that's 600 rupees that we got in Village of Outcasts. We're going to be using now to go acquire the flippers, which means we don't need the fake flippers anymore. We can now use real flippers to get into another dungeon coming up. Yeah, the next 2 dungeons we're going to be doing are flippers. Our flippers are required to complete them. We're also going to be grabbing a medallion from the Quakefish, or the Catfish, a very goofy-looking character. Medallion is one of 2 required items that we need to get into the last 2 dungeons of the game before heading into Cannon's Tower. Yeah, it's really cool routing, being able to grab some stuff like grabbing items along the way. Like we got Flute on the way to Thieves Town, and then Money and Temperate Sword on the way to Skull Woods. It'd be cool to go back when like this category was first run to see how different the routes were. You know, especially before like some of the major glitches were found. I'm still relatively new to this category, of course, so I need to learn. I need to get some knowledge up on this game's history. So next up for Chexhuman is going to be probably one of the harder dungeons at this point in the game. There's a lot that can go wrong. Heck, even just getting there can go wrong. Oof. Yeah, that's unfortunate. You want to try and have full health going into this dungeon, just because there's the second room in the dungeon has these enemies that we've seen. Yeah, we saw them in House of Darkness, these little floating jellies that electrocute themselves in certain phases, and having full health allows you to hit them with a sword beam just to get through the room quickly. Or they could just do nothing, and then you could just walk up to him and hit him anyway. Yeah, this is Ice Palace. We're going to be seeing another bomb jump in here, and kind of one of the first, like, you tackle this, and then you tackle hammer jump, basically, is the order for bomb jumps. And this bomb jump is really important, and it saves a heck of a lot of time doing this dungeon. Like, an insane amount of time. And as of right now, we are waiting for Vascos to essentially get his internet back up. But in the meantime, I'm just going to keep commentating on Chexhuman. We'll find out where he is at some point, hopefully. But yeah, this is really dicey for Chexhuman. Down to 2 hearts. Oh my gosh. Like, that's not even... He gets 1 shot. Unless he takes damage in this room, and then he has... He'd have to mirror out. He's got to be extremely careful. Yeah, because every bomb does a full heart of damage, and of course... Oh, that looked good. Nice bomb jump. Alright. He still has to be extremely careful. Of course, he does have the powder, which he can use to heal himself back up before fighting Cold Stare, but there's still a few enemies along the way that can take you down in 1 hit. Yeah, that's the thing about this game, is like, you could go into a room with full health and leave with 1 heart. It's so fast. It can get out of hand pretty quickly. Yeah, normally in this dungeon you would have to basically go through it twice to get the big key and then get through. There's a block you normally need to push. Well, there's a block you need to push right here, which allows you to hit a switch that unlocks the door to get to Cold Stare. The only thing is, by skipping out on a good chunk of this dungeon means we don't get the item out of this dungeon, which is a defensive item. It's a tunic or mail upgrade, the blue tunic. Most players at this point in the tournament, well, nobody gets this tunic. There's another tunic in the last dungeon of the game that some players still opt to grab because it's right there on the way to... It's not too out of the way to get, and it makes a big difference. Let's see this Cold Stare fight. Nice, nice. Got his first 8 hits. Just has to keep him up the corner, and 2 down, 3 down. Nice. That was very clean. That's another one of those fights that can kind of get out of hand. if you let Cold Stare get out of the corner there. It's also one of those fights where one misfire of the fire rod means you're mirroring out and going through all of it again. Because it takes a full 8 hits with the fire rod to take out his outer shell. I'm going to use this crystal grab. Go get some more coffee. Be right back. Hi, hello, I'm back. Alright, so coming up next for Chexhuman is going to be the next waterlogged dungeon, the Swamp Palace. This is dungeon number 2 of the Dark World dungeons. Generally an easier dungeon. A lot of enemies only do like 1 heart of damage, maybe half a heart. So it's not so much, you know, a dangerous dungeon to go through. There's no huge glitches or any cool tricks. It's really just good movement. So I'm going to count how many bonks we see from Chexhuman in this one. So that's about all I can, like... The only thing I can say about this dungeon. It's kind of a long one, especially the fact that you have to go over to the left side to grab the big key, and there's just a lot of rooms, and then a lot of like cutscenes of you raising the water or lowering the water. Can we just skip to the Argus fight, please? For a lot of players, this is kind of also the dungeon you can kind of relax a little bit, especially if you have like a really clutch Cold Stare fight. You can kind of go in here and be like, I can relax. I can just play the game and not worry about anything. And then all of a sudden you're bonking and running into enemies and getting electrocuted. That little hover there, which is the name of those little tech-type enemies, somehow that one always seems to like immediately run into you after you like slash at them or use a sword beam to get them out of the way. I had to creep around that guy. This is the part of the run where I'd have 2 people to talk about, so I can compare how they optimize their Swamp Palace. But this is now essentially a Let's Play. Yo, what's up, guys? It's your boy Willard J. Bradley here with another Link to the Past No Major Glitches Let's Play. I'm going to react. This is a react video now. I'm going to react to people playing Link to the Past No Major Glitches. So let me just get my webcam up on stream and cover like a fourth of the screen. All right, I'm done. No hammer. I wanted to see a hammer dash. Have we seen any more hammer dashes in this dungeon? We've seen a double dash into that same spike. You know, playing on emulator is obnoxious, I gotta say. You're like, okay, good, there's a hammer dash. It's like, I definitely moved up at least 1 pixel at some point, right? Oh, it's okay. We'll get those mentions at the end of the video. Don't worry. And then, like, right before the Ganon fight actually finishes, like, the little pop-up where it says, you know, watch some of my other videos, like, shows up on screen. But anyway, Chexhuman, easy dungeon. You should never die in Swamp Palace. Sitting at 2 hearts. Sitting at 1 heart. Oh my gosh. I'm sorry. I should never say anything ever. He's got to be a little careful here. I mean, here's the thing, though. Like, there's nothing... I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. My bad. Wow, now I feel bad. I feel so bad. There's nothing immediately dangerous about this dungeon. But, depending on how you go through it, you can easily add up damage over time, little by little, and all of a sudden, boom, you're sitting at 1 heart, 2 hearts. So, that's the point I'm trying to make. Nobody ever... I probably shouldn't have said the part where nobody ever dies in Swamp. Another nice little trick you could do there in that room that Chex was in. He might have done it his first pass, but much like the hammer dash, you can set up a hook dash, essentially, and it'll put you in that spin speed state, or it'll put you in a glitch state where you can't use the hook shot, you can't slash your sword, I think. Something like that. But for whatever reason, it allows you to push those statues. When you're pushing the statues, you'll notice that your feet are going like a mile a minute. But for whatever reason, it allows you to pick up the pot that the statues sit on top of a little bit quicker. Just want to clarify that emulator is great, don't get me wrong. If you can't afford it to like play on console, go for emulator. It's the easiest. I recently, like a month or 2 ago, switched over to console, and I never want to go back. Yeah, no hate against emulators, but the difference is, as a player, is ridiculous. Chex still has to be careful here. He's 2 hits away from dying. Going to be using 2 sword spins to take down Argus. And that's going to do it for Swamp Palace. Yeah, I recently purchased a Super NT, which is one of the newer Super Nintendo remake consoles or whatever. The nice thing about it is it has like HDMI capture. I'm not trying to upsell it at all, guys. I'm just saying, as an experienced player, the switch from BizHawk over to this has been great. I'm talking free PBs, guys. Like, if you want free PBs, go on switch to console. Just like, no, just kidding. It's actually really impressive when you see players with extremely good times on the leaderboards that still play on emulator. Like, you got to give them even extra credit for being that good at the game that they can deal with the limitations of the emulator to be able to still get a ridiculously good time. Also, when you're on console, the only person you can blame for your mistakes is yourself and your controller. But anywho, Swamp Palace complete. Chexhuman is going to be heading on to the next set of little quests, little fetch quests. There are 2 more items he needs to get before he can just finish out the rest of the run diving dungeons. We're heading back up to Death Mountain, not to go back into Tower of Hera and fight Moldarn again, but there is, much like the entrance to Desert Palace, there's a little It's a similar looking little tablet that once read will give you another medallion, much like the Quake medallion we got from Catfish. Oh, and Chexhuman picking up that heart piece just because he can. But we're going to be picking up Ether Medallion, which is required in order to get into the next dungeon, Misery Mire. And the last item we're going to be getting is the Ice Rod, which is required to beat the boss of the last dungeon, Turtle Rock, the 7th dungeon before heading into Ganon's Tower. Nice little dodge from that crab. I was trying to give him the business, and he said, nope. I'm not having it. Yeah, this is kind of an obnoxious dungeon. It has only one use, and it's to kill a boss, and that's it. But I guess that's no different than Ether and Quake. Its only use is to get into dungeons. I mean... Oh, and Chex. Oh no, that's the worst. So, the second room in Misery Mire is... it's got a bunch of Wizrobes that, like, disappear on you if you're not quick enough, and a bunch of Popos, and ideally you want to go into that room with full health. His incidental flute to the entrance to Swamp Palace, or the Light World Dam, while he was sitting there waiting for the flute to, the bird to come pick him up, he got hit by an Octorok. As for on Vascos' side, you know, this text box, other than the crystal text box, is probably one of the the longest text boxes in the game, so hopefully he gets through it. It takes time. Nice. So he had to use a... Usually it's an optimization, you use both the sword beams and the fire rod, but he was able to get through that just using the fire rod alone, so that was really, really quick and clean and good backup for not having sword beams. Not sure where he's going there. I think he was just trying to dodge the fire bar, or fire snake, and accidentally went up the stairs there. Yeah. Chex, what are you doing? He's making some mistakes. Now, normally, in certain versions, or certain categories of this game, you will go up to that bridge. You'll push that little block and go up to the bridge to get the chest there. Of course, I believe that's the compass in this version of the game, so... And one of the hardest parts about switching between categories is it's so easy to get them mixed up. And I know when I first started running NMG, I may have grabbed a few extra chests. I may have grabbed a map here and there in certain dungeons, so it happens. Yeah, much like Palace of Darkness, Misery Mire has another one of those long cutscenes where you have to... In this one, you have to light the torches in order to move this wall here, so you can drop down and get the big key, and then we're going to be getting the next item, which is the Cane of Samaria, a red cane, multi-purpose cane. We're going to be using it a few times. You can use it to lay down a block, which can be used to activate a switch, which is what we're going to see in this dungeon. It can be used to, It has two uses. It lays down a block, and then the second use will blow up that block, and it'll shoot off in 4 cardinal directions, like a little Samaria blast, which we also use to hit switches, hit crystal switches, or even yeah, mostly just hitting crystal switches. And then we'll see its use again in Turtle Rock. We'll talk about it then. There's another little bonk off the big chest, but he does have his Cane of Samaria, and he's going to be heading into the rest of this dungeon now. This is another one of those dungeons where there's not really that much damage that you can take throughout the beginning of it, unless you get bad RNG. There is some required damage to be taken. Oh no, he's gonna have to powder for this fight for sure. That Wizrobe's kind of annoying because if you if you go too early, you'll run. You'll do exactly what he did there, and he got to the Wizrobe before he actually finished spawning in, so he kind of like. So he didn't kill him, and then he like double back so he wouldn't bonk, but then recorrected himself and walked into the Wizrobe, and those guys do quite a bit of damage. I didn't see it, but I heard it. Sounds like he got the nice little cane dash. Dropping a little extra bomb along the way. You know, I guess that is fair. If you still have powder, you'll see players usually only have one bomb going into Misery Mire because that's the only one you need. And when you use up that bomb, it'll automatically switch to the next item on the list. Normally, players who don't get powder, it'll switch to the Fire Rod, which players will use to hit that crystal switch that we just saw. But I guess if you have powder, you might as well go ahead and do it if you intend on using the powder before going into the fight. Yeah, here's a boss fight that utilizes damage boosts to hit these little eyeballs, whilst taking the least amount of damage. Those eyeballs do quite a bit of damage, but as long as you're standing in that goop, you'll take the damage, and then you'll get the invulnerability frames so that you can spin. So you can spin on those guys and take them out pretty quickly. And then it's just 8 arrows to take down the big guy. So nice Vitreous fight from Chex, walking away with plenty of arrows. We're not going to be needing those until we get into Ganon's Tower, but it just means he doesn't have to grab extra arrows along the way. Alright, next up for Chexhuman is going to be heading into the last dungeon before we head to Ganon's Tower. This is another dungeon that can go horribly right or horribly wrong. There's a lot of enemies in here that do a ton of damage, and by the game's logic, you're supposed to have the blue mail by now. There's 3 separate entities in this dungeon that can do 4 hearts of damage. The chain chomps, which are probably the worst enemies in the game. The lasers, like the eyeball lasers, which we will be seeing, especially later on in the dungeon, and what is known as the nickname the Pokies, because they look like the Pokies from Super Mario. I believe their actual name is Hoku Boku, but that's a stupid name, so we call them Pokies. And unfortunately, getting word that Vascos has forfeited from the match due to internet issues. And so this will be a win for Chexhuman as long as he finishes the run. And looks like we won't be getting him back. So he's going to be forever staying on top of the pyramid in the Dark World. But hey, as a solo commentator, it just made my job even easier. Yeah, it's unfortunate. It's also worth noting that neither of these players will be advancing into the next stage of the tournament, regardless of the outcome of this race. So it was mostly just a for-fun race to not go 0-3. Yeah, this is a nice little trick you can do. You can use a hookshot while you're on the platform to hookshot that torch. Allows you to fall into the hole, which resets you back to the start of the room, so you don't have to wait out the entirety of that platform. And Chexhuman opting to mirror out as opposed to double backing. those rollers do a lot of damage. I don't remember if they do the full 4, but actually no, I think they do 4 hearts of damage. So make that 4 enemies in this dungeon that do too much damage. Nice pokey. Coming into the chain chomp room. Let's see if he gets some good patterns. Nice. Okay, the chain chomp on the left, moving up to the top left. And Chex able to get through that room without any struggle. All right, Chex grabbing the free arrows right there. He's at plenty of arrows. He only really needs, 18 arrows for the beginning of, for a portion of the next dungeon, and then 10 more arrows. Well, not even 10. Only 8 more arrows for the next part, the second part. So a total of 100 arrows. Yeah, it's a fairly long dungeon, Turtle Rock. A lot of movement, a lot of squeezing through these rooms without taking damage. The nice thing is, having powder, there are a ton of anti-fairies and bunny beams throughout that allow you to get back up to full health. But the next big trick that we're going to be seeing from Chex is a nice little thing called the laser skip. Later on in the dungeon, there's a room with 4 chests and 4 eye lasers, which are little lasers that if you either looking at them or looking... Actually, no, yeah. If you look at them, they'll shoot a laser. They'll shoot you with a laser that does 4 hearts of damage. And he's going to be doing a nice little lineup to be able to dash past the laser without him having to, Normally, the game wants you to get the item out of this dungeon, which is the mirror shield, which allows you to block those lasers. And, some players might opt to grab the mirror shield anyway. It is a little time costly because you have to, go outside, go back inside, and open the big chest. So it's just a few extra screen transitions, but the laser skip's not too hard to grab. Whew, really nice. Almost fell right into the hole instead, but managed to seize that Kata Samari block to knock out the hard hat beetle, and then dash through to not get hit by the laser and grab the chest. So really good room. And we're going to be heading on into the Trinex fight. Chex feeling confident enough that he doesn't need to grab any extra health other than that 1 heart there. There's another fight that could either... It's an easy fight to get through without taking damage, but you have to move quickly, because if the fight goes on for too long, especially during the first phase, when he's taking out these 2 heads, it can get a little hectic. Fire head down and ice head down, so that's phase 1. Very nice Trinex fight. Even getting the double spin. And that's going to do it. That is our last crystal dungeon. With these crystals in hand, we're going to be heading over to the west side of Dark World, Death Mountain, where we're going to be heading into the last dungeon of the game, Ganon's Tower, which is it's all... I mean, it's always all execution. But Ganon's Tower is another one of those dungeons that can either go horribly well or horribly wrong. Oh, nice. That was also that was a gold split T-Rock for Chexhuman. So that was the best they've ever done that section of the game, based on their splits, their timer. They're also, at this point, they're still 48 seconds behind, but there's usually a good chunk of time save in Ganon's Tower. Also, an update, their personal best right now is a 135, so at this point we're looking at maybe a high 135, low 136, unless you can save some time along the way here. So at this part in the run, we just got to cheer for Chexhuman to get that sweet, sweet PB, because there's nothing greater than getting a PB in a tourney race. Of course, he can breathe a little easier knowing that his opponent... well, actually, I don't know if his opponent... if he knows that his opponent forfeit, but... Of course, if he's watching the restream, which he's allowed to do, he could see that his opponent is still sitting at the pyramid, or that his stream's not running. Oof. Just trying to get close enough to hook that block, and unfortunately taking a dip down the hole. Another option you can have there is just to bonk one of the blocks right next to you, so you just basically bonk over the hole. Ganon's Tower is a pretty straightforward dungeon. We're just getting the big key, which will allow us to go upstairs. The item in this dungeon is similar to the item in Ice Palace. It's a tunic upgrade. And the difference between green mail and red mail is pretty ridiculous. You'll see some players go ahead and grab it along the way. I don't agree with Chex grabbing those arrows there, since there's a free set of arrows along the way here. Normally you can actually bonk on the on the wall to bonk over that little portal there and avoid having to go through that transition. Yeah, worth noting, Ganon's Tower, you have to refight all the Light World bosses. So you have to fight Armos again, this time on ice. You have to fight Landmollas again, this time with a little fireball shooter, which is really annoying. Really nice Armos fight from Chexhuman. And he'll probably grab the 10 arrows here as well. Nope, he's good to go. You only need 8 arrows to get to these next couple rooms. The mimics that we saw in Palace of Darkness that have to be defeated with the bow and arrow there's 2 rooms with 2 of them each, so 4 arrows per room. I personally like to grab arrows along the way, because I still use the bow and arrow along the way in the gauntlet. But when you get like a 10 arrow drop like that, then who needs it? And a 5 arrow drop, so he's already up to 21. Nice mimics. Really nice. Nice and clean. So this is what we call the gauntlet. It's a series of rooms that either requires that... Well, I guess the gauntlet is really when you start get to the rooms where you have to kill all the enemies in the room multiple times in a row. And he's sitting at good, comfy health. He's got full magic, so there's that bomb hole that he just passed has 2 fairies and a full magic refill, but he's sitting good, so he doesn't need to stop there. Nice, nice. Yeah, these rooms get progressively harder to get through quickly, especially when they start adding more BMOs, more spikes, more ice. But Check's getting some really good patterns from the enemies. And then after this, he's got to fight Landmollas again. So much easier when you have the Fire Rod, since 2 Fire Rod shots take out a Landmolla, so he's going to use a spin, which also does basically a Fire Rod shot of damage. Oh, shooting to the right by accident. He's going to have to finish this off with a spin. You want to have magic going into the next part, the next couple parts. Optimize, or using the Kata Samaria allows you to take out these Wizrobes in these next couple rooms easily. It's almost like this room was designed with that in mind. And once he gets through this bridge, and hopefully no enemies get in his way... Nice, 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 nice. Sometimes you'll run into those enemies and they'll just knock you in the hole, and then poke you a couple times while you're falling. So just gotta light these 4 torches, and then head to the next room. Go upstairs, light 4 more torches, and then he's just a couple rooms away from the Moldorn refight. Taking it a little bit slow so that you can grab that magic. That little spark taking that fireball away from him, or the fire rod shot. Yeah, honestly, this is a really clean gauntlet for Chex. I'm curious. Let's see if he saves any time. And it depends on the Agatu fight, really, at this point. He has a 132-30 for taking out Agatu. So he's going to need a really nice Agatu fight. So basically, much like the Aga 1 fight, he's going to be shooting the yellow, the energy orbs, or the blue balls. But this time there's 3 of them, so you have 3 opportunities to hit him. He still only takes 6 hits to defeat, but it really comes down to how what patterns show up. If you can get like a triple or a double hit, and that's pretty good. Oh man, that's fortunate. Okay. That's a 1, that's a 2. Might be able to get a 2 out of this. Oh, man. Oh, nice. Okay. A 1-2-0-3. That's 4 cycles, pretty good. Of course, you know, much like Land Balls, the 2 cycles, the best you can do. 3 cycles, pretty good as well. Chex is going to be... He's going to be maybe 10 seconds behind going into the Ganon fight. So if he has a really good Ganon, like 0 warps, he could still PB on this run. But essentially, the Ganon fight is pretty straightforward. You're going to be seeing players going ham on this guy to do 12 hits of damage for the first phase, another 12 as quickly as possible. You want to try and get the 12 hits in quickly, so he only does 1 cycle per phase, but unfortunately he's going to have to do a 2 cycle for this phase. Not getting that Trident spin. This is also not a very friendly phase 2, so it's going to be double-double for him. Alright, at this point, the last thing we want to see is Chexhuman's timer going red. This is phase 3, and he's getting a ton of warps. Basically, he's going to warp around the room. You got to hit him 4 times, and each time you hit him, he's going to drop down a portion of the platform. And all of a sudden now, if you fall on that platform, you're going to have to redo the entire fight. So you got to be extra careful not to take a dip. He does not want Chexhuman to PB at all. What a jerk. That was like 20 warps. Maybe not. Let's see if Chex can get this nice little glitch here. There we go. So that is called the torch glitch. Essentially, both those torches go out, and in a fight you normally have to light both of them in order to interact with Ganon at all, other than you can still take damage, of course. But if you light the left torch again, if you relight it before the torch on the right goes out, then it's essentially glitches the right torch to never ever go out. And it saves you a good chunk of time and saves you a good chunk of magic on this fight. Also worth noting about this fight is that being able to defeat him with the Tempered Sword like he's doing right now is actually a glitch. Normally you have to get the silver arrows, and every time you hit him, normally he turns blue, and then you hit him with 4 silver arrows to take him down. But if you can hit him while he's beginning his little warp, you actually do damage, and it's only 12 of those in order to take him down. And Chexhuman getting really close. He's going to be just a bit off of his PB, but that's going to do it. Chex will be our winner for today, finishing out his run and coming in at a time of 1:35 something. 1:35:27.3, about 25 seconds off of his PB. So can we get some GGs in chat for him? Yeah, overall, that was a really good run from Chex. Only real mistakes, of course, were missing the hammer jump initially, and let's see, what else? Oh, and the Death and Swamp Palace. That cost him a good chunk of time. But I see some easy PBs in the future. There was also a good chunk of bonks that he could probably remove from his route. I'm joking, of course. Nobody intends to bonk unless it's required. But we'll see if Chex wants to come in and chit-chat about this one. Unfortunate what happened to Vascos, so we never got to actually get like a race, a real race. But still nice to be able to watch a player just play through the game. Yeah, congratulations to Chex on taking a win, going 1-2 in the tournament. You know, at the end of the day, as long as you get one win in this tournament, then you can feel good about yourself. I mean, I know I went in hoping for only one win, and there's a good chance that I might leave. I might go out with only one win. It's a hard game. It's really hard. It's really hard to get good at this game and get consistent at this game. And all it takes is one mistake to kind of really throw everything off. So. Yeah, I'm gonna send a message to Chex. Chex, I just sent you a message, and go ahead and join the voice channel, and I'll pull you into the restream, or you'll join. There you go. Welcome, Chex. GG on the run.
GG, thanks.
Unfortunately, Vascos had to drop out pretty early due to internet issues, so it was basically it was a Let's Play. It was really fun to watch and commentate.
Oh, I appreciate it. Thanks for watching. I saw his screen freeze on the pyramid.
Yeah. He also had a really difficult Hera. I think he died. He died after Tile Room, but before getting the big key. And then he fell down the double hole doing the bomb jump, and then got knocked down the hole at Moldorm as well, I think.
Oof.
But yeah, how'd you feel about your run overall? Only 25 seconds off of your PB. Not bad. Yeah, and then Danny kind of made sure you didn't PB with all those warps.
Oh yeah, I guess so. Well, I was experiencing some frame rate drops in my emulator every few seconds, I guess. So I was a little distracted by that. And I'm ready to move on to Super Nintendo console. I just need to get the equipment, I guess.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I got a little panicky in Swamp Palace and just ended up dying, which I've never done before. So that was interesting.
It was unfortunate when and if you go back and watch this, because I was talking about emulator, the difference between emulator and console in Swamp Palace, which was probably partial to blame for that death in Swamp, because
really?
It's I'm assuming there were a lot of bonks, which is very, very true of just playing on emulator. The input delay can be kind of really obnoxious.
I was gonna mention, I've never bonked so much. I'm sure it was in the 30s or 40s.
That was a lot of bonks. It was quite a bit. Other than the missed hammer jump, which apparently you set the bomb too far to the right and then didn't stand close enough to the bomb.
Oh, okay.
To get the hammer jump, which is what Scrivo had said in chat.
Oh, okay, that's helpful.
That and Swamp Death were about it. Everything else was pretty straightforward.
Yeah. I just need to be more careful. I'm less awake in the daytime, I think, and play better at night. But I'm not sure if that's true. I just need to work on my nervousness and practice some more.
Well, I mean, only 25 seconds off of your PB in a tournament race is pretty good. You were about, what, 10 seconds away from your PB.
Looks like 24.
Going into Ganon?
Yeah, that's right, 11 seconds.
Yeah, I had your stream up as well.
I was 0 seconds.
Splits.
I was 0.6 seconds away from my PB going into Swamp Palace. So then that turned into a minute loss.
Oh, yeah. Well, at least, of all the places to die in Swamp, that part of Swamp is not too bad, I guess.
Right.
Better dying there than against, Argus or something. But, overall, it was fun to watch. With that, though, that's the end of your run in the NMG tournament. I'm curious if you're going to continue running this outside of the tournament in preparations maybe for the next one, whenever that is, or if you're going to be moving on to other things.
I'm going to be playing different categories, glitch categories. So I'm not sure the next time I'll be running a lot of NMG, but I'll be playing.
Good. Did you have any personal best goals in mind when you joined the tournament? Because you started.
Oh yeah, I don't know. I was just trying to get sub 135, but
yeah, you're close.
It'll happen.
Yeah, you just once you get sub 35, then or 135, then you can move on to other stuff. So.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, overall it was a fun race to watch.
I'm stuck playing this game. Until then.
It sucks, man. Gotta keep playing the Zelda. But happy for you that you at least got one win in the tournament. So it's got to feel at least there's got to be some good feeling from that.
Sure.
It's a tough thing about this game is that just depending on seeding, you can go into a tournament already knowing that you're not going to be moving on past the first stage, just because of how hard this game is. And a lot of times PBs do tell the full story. You're not going to go into a race with someone who's a sub 130 and win 9 times out of 10.
Right.
But, it's tough. You had Emma and DK in your group, and I think they're both sub 130s. So, woof.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, either way, I hope you did have fun in the tournament, and look forward to seeing more from you in other Link to the Past tournaments that may have started today.
Yeah, exactly. Yep, I'll be around for randomizer starting tomorrow night, so that'll be fun.
Well, have fun and good luck, and GG's.
GG's. Thanks again.
No problem. See you in the next one. All right, guys. Well, that is going to do it for us here on Speed Gaming 2 with this NMG run. Let's take a quick look, a quick gander at what we got coming up next. I believe in about 9 minutes on this channel, we will have Kirby Nightmare in Dreamland. So if you're a fan of the series, if you love the music, or if you've never seen this speedrun before, I highly recommend you stick around and check it out. It's a good game. It's based on the NES version. It's a remake of the NES version, Kirby's Adventure, which is one of my favorites. So check it out. Thank you guys again for having me. This was a lot of fun to commentate, and I'll see you guys in the next one.